Alright, this is just a rambling video about my current status with the water fuel cell and my potential issues that I must conquer. Number one, obviously not enough voltage to the cell. I need to get much more voltage to the cell to produce more hydrogen. And the primary reasons around this are as follows. Number one, could be the actual cells themselves. The gap between the two cell plates is too small, too much of a dead short condition. So perhaps a larger diameter outside tube or a slightly smaller diameter inside tube to create that gap a little bit wider, create more resistance, and allow the voltage to be exponentially higher on the cell. Number two reason is that I can't push enough amps into the VIC without MOSFETs blowing up. Could be the fact that my MOSFETs just are not sufficient enough. I need a more industrial strength MOSFET. I'm using these Bojack, what are they, 520 through 540s MOSFETs, and they just keep blowing. The other reason for that is that this is a more likely reason, is that there's too much back EMF on the primary winding. The power goes through the coil, right, and energizes, but then that magnetic field collapses and it wants to push that current back through the opposite direction of that driver circuit. And what happens is you have these extreme spikes of voltage or current coming backwards towards the driver circuit, and that damages the MOSFET, basically blows it. And I've showed this in some of my other videos. I believe it's the number 2, the purple indicator on my oscilloscope showing the voltage level input and the noise on it. So that is that's the other primary reason, because I think that I've seen some of these ZVS driver circuits where they're pumping 30 volts into even 60 and higher into a 0 volt switching driver circuit hooked up to these very high power or high voltage flyback transformers, like old school TV flyback transformers, producing just arc gaps of just fucking enormous length, distance, incredible voltage. We're talking 20, 40, 60, 80 kilovolts and higher, which if that could get that much voltage on the water cell, that would just produce an untold amount of energy. So perhaps looking to build a new ZVS driver, something kind of replicate this one little kid on YouTube I saw that created one out of a ATX computer power supply, basically taking the MOSFETs out of that and the inductors and building that thing. And that thing just incredible arcs on that. So I need to kind of emulate that driver circuit, but be able to have that hooked up to my VIC circuit to be able to have that mass amount of energy instantaneously available thanks to that driver circuit, allowing voltage to spike extremely high. So we might hook up a few more cells here and put it in series to see what that does with voltage. I believe we kind of maxed out last time on these six cells. As you see right there, there are 6 sets of 6 cells in each set, all wired in series. And if I add maybe a few more to that, maybe that would raise resistance up to be able to allow for higher voltages. But I think the real magic is going to be in doing some mathematical calculations and finding out the inductive reactance of these coils that I'm making, and tuning those to where we have enough inductive reactance at a certain frequency to restrict amp flow, rather than adding physical resistance to the cell through more cells, adding additional cells in series. That is essentially, for each cell there is resistive loss there, and the real magic is in the electromagnetic resistance or reactance of the inductors and capacitors, for that matter. So I've been doing a little bit more research on the inductive capacitance and finding this out, because we want to be in somewhere, I would assume we want to be ideally in the 1 to 5 kilohertz range as far as our input driving signal. That being said, doesn't require necessarily exotic components of any sort, but my amperage consumption through the actual driver circuit is much higher than what Stan would claim. He was in this one document claiming achieving 40 kilovolts at 1 milliamp. 1 milliamp is next to absolute nothing, and that's only 40 watts of power. So he's driving his circuit ultimately with 40 watts of power. But that was also the, let's say, spark plug injector, the very, very small, tiny gap cell, the taper resonant cavity, if you will, that he's able to achieve those extremely high voltage levels. That is just one mode of operation, which is the instant ignition of water droplets to energy. Whereas the linear tube cells are more for, I would assume, just production of gases and things like that without the instant explosion. So depending on the resonant cavity, I believe that has really a lot to do with how much voltage you're able to achieve. So maybe these the cylindrical tubes that I have right now probably have a theoretical limit or a physical limit on how much voltage they can take, and that also probably has to do with the gap, the size of the tube, surface area, all of that. So we're trying to kind of tune in, if you will, to some electrical properties here that's going to kind of optimize the production we're getting.
In this series of videos, I document my progress on unlocking the secrets of Stanley A. Meyer. For over a decade, I've studied and replicated the devices of Stanley Meyer, specifically the water fuel cell, a device that splits water into hydrogen and oxygen for use as a combustible fuel. Here, I discuss water fuel cell theory in hopes of connecting with other like-minded individuals to unlock the secrets. This is Stan's Revenge.
The best physical production I've got has been from this toroid transformer right here. And the only thing I really did differently is I've got these choke coils wound opposite directions all the way around it. And otherwise it's just a standard step down transformer in reverse. So it is stepping up 12 volts as rated to 115 volts as rated. I can connect these two cables right there and get it up to 230 volts output, and that brings us to about 150 volts actually across the cell, which is about the highest I've got. I also get the maximum production. We are over the 100 milliliters per minute mark there when we are at that level, but we are consuming a bit of amperage too. We're quite a few hundred watts to do that, and a lot of that has to do, I think, with the properties of the cell and the resistance of those cells and blah 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 blah. The best wave, about this transformer cell right here. This guy right here, maybe I can reference it. The type of waveform I was getting from it, it was decent enough, but the best waveform I've got was off of something like this guy right here, something like this guy right here. This was part of my flyback transformer. maybe I can reference the one had an inductor like this on one side, and the secondary over here on this side, with the primary wrapped essentially underneath it. But I think that's also partially why I'm getting so much back EMF, is that the primary coil should be wound on the outside of this inductor. So I'm going to try to maybe rewire some things here and maybe be able to squeeze out some more voltage, but I think it really boils down to is my cells. So I'm going to start working with my cells and designing new cells, because these are the only cells I've really ever created since my original 1-inch cells, which were in my original videos. So I really haven't done too much R&D on the cells itself, as far as cell spacing or gap, you know, the length of them, etc. So maybe it's time that we dive further into that to see what we can get. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this old flyback transformer again with I think it was this primary coil that we had in it, and something like this guy as the secondary, and this guy as the inductor. Because if I reference that video here, we were getting beautiful equal opposite polarity pulses. It was pretty much exactly the pulse frequency or waveform that Stan Meyer has been talking about and shows in his documentation. Even out a frequency here. How that's adjusted. We don't want them dipping over 0 volts though. And that just gives us phenomenal performance here. Look at these babies go. The voltage was only still at 120 volts or so. And I know if we can ramp that up with that waveform up to higher voltage levels, then we're going to be really making some progress. So still trying to figure out some kind of active clamp, like I was talking about, the back EMF on the primary, making some kind of active clamp or a low side clamp, or maybe an active clamping with a P channel or N channel MOSFET. A lot of things that have kind of come up here. I'm at these bottlenecks as far as this goes. I can't get the cell any higher than 150 volts. And I know it's like that glass ceiling, so as soon as I bust that, we're on our way. But, you know, for my original videos, this is one of my original transformers. I was getting incredible voltages off this, at least 10 kilovolts. And I just have to maybe just recreate this transformer exactly how it was, and the rest of the circuit, which was maybe I can reference, but I was using very basic inductors on these silly little ferrite rods, and getting crazy voltages off of it. So maybe if I can merge those two together, as far as the high voltage we're getting off this one and the waveform we were getting off these guys, if we can merge those two together, get the high voltage and the proper waveform through the circuit interaction, and run that at resonance on the circuit, then that's game. There's a long way to go though.
This is Stan's Revenge.